Let's talk about the origin of Easter for a few minutes. The origin of Easter, a holiday associated with the observance of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, is actually based on an ancient pagan celebration. Christians recognize this day as commemorating the biggest event of their faith, but like so many other Christian holidays, Easter has become commercialized and mixed with non-Christian traditions like the Easter Bunny, Easter parades, and hunting for Easter eggs. How did this happen? Well, first, let's look at its pagan roots. The origin of Easter dates back to ancient times, not long after the global flood, which the Bible talks about in Genesis 6-9. Nimrod, a grandson of Noah, had turned from following his grandfather's God and had become a tyrannical ruler. According to the biblical record, as king, Nimrod created Babel, Nineveh, Ashur, Kala, and other cities, all known for lifestyles that promoted unspeakable evil and perversion. When Nimrod died, his wife, Queen Semiramis, deified him as a sun god or life giver. Later, he would become known as Baal, and those who followed the religion Semiramis created in his name would be called Baal worshippers. They became associated with idolatry, demon worship, human sacrifice, and other practices regarded as evil. The origin of Easter involves the birth of Semiramis' illegitimate son, Tammuz. Somehow, Semiramis convinced the people that Tammuz was actually Nimrod reborn, since people had been looking for the promised Savior since the beginning of mankind. See Genesis 3:15 for that. They were persuaded by Semiramis to believe that Tammuz was that Savior, even that he had been supernaturally conceived. Before long, in addition to worshiping Tammuz, or Nimrod reborn according to her, the people also worship Semiramis herself as the goddess of fertility. In other cultures, she has been called Ishtar, Ashtur, and yes, Easter. The origin of Easter goes back to the springtime ritual instituted by Semiramis following the death of Tammuz, who, according to tradition, was killed by a wild boar. Legend has it that through the power of his mother's tears, Tammuz was resurrected in the form of new vegetation that appeared on the earth. According to the Bible, it was in the city of Babel that the people created a tower in order to defy God. Up until that time, all the people of the earth spoke one language. The building of that tower led God, as recorded in Genesis 11 verse 7, to confuse their tongues to keep them from being further unified in their false beliefs. As the people moved into other lands, many of them took their pagan practices with them. Contemporary traditions such as the Easter Bunny and the Easter egg can also be traced back to practices established by Semiramis. Because of their prolific nature, rabbits have long been associated with fertility and its goddess Ishtar. Ancient Babylonians believed in a fable about an egg that fell into the Euphrates River from heaven and from which Queen Astarte was hatched. Just for reference, Queen Astarte is another name for Ishtar or Semiramis. So how did Easter become the resurrection day for Christians? The origin of Easter for Christians is simply the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ about 2,000 years ago. According to the Gospel accounts, Jesus Christ, the true Messiah, promised in the Old Testament, was crucified and resurrected at the time of the Jewish Passover. Since that awesome event took place, those who believe Christ is their Messiah have honored that day and often celebrated it with traditional Passover. As the gospel of Christ spread throughout non-Jewish nations, among people who did not have a history of celebrating the Passover, the pagan rites of Easter gradually became assimilated into what the Christian church called Resurrection Day. Compromising the commandments of God with the comfort of the world is as old as the nation of Israel itself. Actually, American history teaches us that Easter was dismissed as a pagan holiday by the nation's founding Puritans and did not begin to be widely observed until just after the Civil War. Those interested in a Christian view of American history and the gradual compromise of America's biblical foundations may wish to read books such as The Light and the Glory by Peter Marshall and David Manuel. What does the origin of Easter mean to you personally? It all comes together and makes sense in part 2, so watch that now.